Hey everybody, Kimberly here, and I've got a preview for you in a pretty unique way because I don't have a physical copy of the game Nature with me. So what I'll do is show you some of the pictures of the cards, components, and the artwork as I explain what this game offers players because it's coming out soon on Kickstarter and you've got to check it out. I had the opportunity to play with Dominic and Ross from North Star Games on Tabletop Simulator and had a really good time exploring not just the base game, but the modular system that Nature offers players. So in a base game, you have 4 rounds of play and there are no extra modules. It'll take you about 45 minutes to play, which is fantastic because it really hits that sweet spot between 30 minutes and an hour, and there's just enough strategy here and forgiveness in the system to really encourage some strategic choices and, of course, that modular growth. So you're going to create these unique ecosystems every single time that you play. So much like we've seen with some of the earlier games from North Star Games, we've got like Oceans and we have Evolution. We've now got Nature. So it fits squarely in the theme and in this world of having a particular species that is going to essentially evolve with particular traits so that they can survive in the system, in the ecosystem with which they are living. They want to find sustainable food, which of course, yes, and protect themselves from potential predators. So you're going to have a watering hole that is going to provide all the plants that are available for herbivores to eat. And then of course, the animals themselves are going to provide the meat for the predators in the game. There's some really cool features here because players, I said earlier, this is going to be a little bit more forgiving than maybe some of the other systems we've seen. And what that means is, let's say one of your systems, animals goes extinct during the game because somebody eats all of its population. You will be siphoning that loss into your next round so that you will start with another group of animals and it's not a total devastating loss. And I find that to be just really, really cool. So players are going to have a size of a creature and they're going to have a population. So really what you're looking at is how small or big is my creature and how large is it in the sense of how many are in my herd or in my group of animals. And those are really the only two characteristics that you need to keep in mind as you grow that particular species with those characteristic cards, because you can do a variety of things with cards on your turn. What it's called is the adapting phase. So you can play a card from your hand and just discard it to the discard pile and take a population token. Essentially, you're growing the population of a particular species. You can do the same thing with size. Take a card from your hand, discard it into the discard pile, and then choose any of your species to gain in size from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and so forth. So that's just going to be the simple way of growing. You want lots of population because the more you eat food, the more points you get. Every food you eat is 1 point. A large size allows you to eat more points when when plants are in short supply. So it lets you kind of gobble up everything before somebody else can get there. You can also play a card as a trait, and the trait cards are great. They're fantastic. You really have to find that balance of getting and protecting, which is the defense. So there might be those defensive cards, there might be those cards that allow you to gain more when you gain more, and you have to keep track of that. There are additional free actions, and one of the free actions on your turn when you're playing in this in a round is players are going to be playing their cards face down into the spaces they want to essentially grow their species, but you're not telling other players what your cards are. You're just saying this particular species is going to have a trait or 2 or 3. But you're not telling them during this card phase. You're growing your species, you're growing in size and population, and you're going to be playing those down. But during this phase, you tell other players that you're going to be an herbivore or you're going to be a carnivore. Essentially, you are going to be a predator. And turn order matters so much, because if you see that somebody else is wanting to be a predator at the table, they're gunning for you and your species. They're not going for the watering hole, because they're not going to eat plants. They're going to eat meat, and meat is your animals. And you can also play that late in the round. Let's say you're the last player to go and everybody else is an herbivore. Go predator, eat them up, right? I mean, so timing and turn order and this phase of these playing cards and using your cards as actions is really, really cool. So this is all the adapting phase. And then we're going to go to the feeding phase, when everybody has essentially played the cards in turn order, doing what they want to do with their species and with their cards. And this is where we are going to feed. And you forage at the watering hole, but there's only a certain number of plants that are available. And if there aren't any plants, then you're not going to eat. And there might be a chance that you starve. But foraging is when you take a plant from the watering hole based on the forage value. And that's where you're going to get some of those trait cards that help you eat better. Plus, if there are only a certain number in there and you go first and you eat all the plants, nobody else is going to get those plants. You could choose to hunt using a predatory trait, and based on its size, it can never eat plants, and it has to essentially feed on other species, and the predator has a hunt value equal to or greater than the defend value of its intended prey. So it needs to be hungry, it needs to essentially be equal to or greater than, and the predator can overcome all the prey's defensive traits. So it might be really hard to catch particular animals. So that's why you would go on the defense, knowing that somebody else is going to come after you with their predator. So the hunted species, if it's successful, loses a population represented by the population token itself. And then any plant or meat token on the hunted population returns. So you're not going to gain those points if you've already fed. Then you're just really, really delicious for the predator. They still are just going to take a meat token for every feeding based on its size. After everyone has fed, then you're going to move into that cleanup phase, and you're going to bank your plant and your meat tokens, and every single one of those is going to be 1 point. You put that in your food bag, and then we will essentially start again the next round by adding the food to the watering hole based on our number, and then you will draw your cards back up to start the next round. So the person with the most points wins the game. You'll also get 2 points for every surviving species, and at the start of every round, there are 4 rounds, players are going to gain a species at the start of every round. You may not be able to keep all of your species alive because you might go extinct, but that's the forgiveness in the game that I find really interesting. And I love the interplay with the choices of making your size bigger, like your animal itself is just growing in size, which makes it a little bit stronger. But population is going to be how you get those victory points, which is getting the food. So you have to okay, how big do I grow? How fast do I grow? And how much population? But you also have to give yourself those trait cards. So there's a lovely balance here. It's a great 45-minute game. And then the coolest thing about this is there are these modules. And I have to say the modules are really, really interesting. So all I'm going to do is give you the quick, play-by-play of what the modules offer. And you can add up to 1 or 2 to create a little bit of a longer game, but a more dynamic, nuanced play. So the first one is Jurassic. This is subtitled Size is Power. Jurassic creates a more aggressive ecosystem in which apex predators can assert dominance even while smaller species flourish in overlooked hidden crevices. The Jurassic module appeals to people who like fighting games. And a little bit of information is, this is Dom's favorite style, and not necessarily my favorite style. I actually, when I played, I added flight, and flight, soar to the skies, allows you to evade predators by soaring high into the sky and migrating into a safe haven breeding ground. The flight module creates less aggressive ecosystem for people who don't like direct conflict in their game. So it was really fun to really play that way and see how flight worked with this kind of scarcity. It didn't mean that we didn't have predators, but it was less of an aggressive game, which is more my style. And then there's that module that I could put in there. Okay, the next one is Amazon Rainforest, surprises behind every leaf in the canopy. Rainforest creates an ecosystem bursting with population. It also introduces hidden card play, reflecting the uncertainty that lurks behind every leaf. The Rainforest modules for players who enjoy mystery, deduction, and bluffing in their games. I mean, these modules are just so cool because they're wholly unique and they have a totally different feel to them. All three of those that I've mentioned so far of the 5 are just so different from each other. Here's another. 4, the Arctic Tundra, journey to the edge of the livable world. In the Arctic tundra, animals struggle to maintain a healthy population in a harsh environment where the bitter cold conspires against every living thing. The Arctic tundra module appeals to gamers who like a brutal challenge in their games. Again, another way of playing, another style, and what you're doing is you're incorporating these new decks of cards that give different traits, and you draw from the base deck and or you draw from the module deck. And so you're using the regular cards and the new cards, but in a balance with which you want to do. And it's just the coolest feature. And the last one, this one's natural disasters. Witness the power of Mother Nature. Natural disasters creates a more chaotic ecosystem that levels the playing field, forcing experienced players to adapt and reminding people they're not in full control of their destinies. The natural disasters modules for gamers who care more about the stories that get shared than who wins. I think that sounds like me too. I want a story. I want an experience. I want to remember the night. I'm not necessarily concerned with who's dominating or who's winning. So for me, flight and natural disasters sound amazing. I think Arctic Tundra is awesome. And at some point, I will be confident enough to play Jurassic. But I think Amazon Rainforest sounds really, really cool too, because the mystery, deduction, and bluffing in the games, that can be really fun when you can read people incredibly well. So I think that the nature-based game, Dynamite, again, more forgiving and a little bit more streamlined than some of the other games in their system of these kinds of games where you're building up a species, you're evolving, and then you're trying to survive. But I also think that the modules and the modular nature of nature is so thoughtful and so considerate and so just involved. Like, you really do feel like the theme of each of those modules comes into play. And it adds complexity, but it also adds lovely, delicious flavor and a new style of gameplay that asks players to strategically respond. So can't say enough good things about all those modules and what they really offer players. So just really, really cool. I've got all the information in the description below for the Kickstarter, for their landing page, for all kinds of stuff for nature. So just check it out. I've been trying to share some of the pictures, some of the content with you that I have, as everything right now that I have is just online. But boy, is it going to be cool. And they're sharing the game with people so that you can actually play it and learn it and understand it before you invest in the game, which I think is a fantastic way of knowing you've got a really great, a great thing, and you stand behind it and you say, okay, play it before you buy it, essentially. Like, give it a go and see if this really does live up to what we say it does. I will say in my gameplay experience of it, it does. But don't take my word for it. You can go and check it out yourself and just see the cool things that nature offers players. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for me this time. I'll see you later.